Okay, so a quick reminder of the factual and conceptual questions that we need to keep on coming back to. It's all about scientific models. And in this case, we're talking about a model as the classification of foods into different components. And then we're going to break that down further into looking at biological molecules, which are modeled for making it easier for us to see, which is why they are helpful. So here, okay, you could say that this is actually a model, and this model breaks down the classification of carbohydrates. The bits that I want to reinforce from last time is the fact that we've got small sugar units which are called monosaccharides, and monosaccharides is an example of a small unit which we're going to refer to as a monomer. So the monomers of carbohydrates are called monosaccharides, and we've got some examples down here that we talked about last time. If we add lots of these monomers together, what we get is a polymer. And a polymer is many monomers all chemically joined together. And for carbohydrates, we call this a polysaccharide because we've got many sugar units. And again, we've got some examples down here to reinforce that. I want us to now think about the lipid molecule, and lipids are macromolecules. Lipids are also referred to as being polymer molecules because they're made up of many small repeated units or monomers. Like carbohydrates, they've got the same chemical elements. So we've got the chemical element carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, and that's really the takeaway. So you must remember that lipids contain carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. That's the same as carbohydrate, but the proportion of these is slightly different, which classifies lipids as being chemically different to carbohydrates. In the food that we eat, all food that we eat is going to be made up of what was referred to as triglyceride. So triglyceride is a lipid form of the food that we eat, and it's a polymer. It's a large molecule. It's a macromolecule. So triglyceride is a new word that we're going to add to our vocabulary list, but a triglyceride is a polymer of lipid, and the polymer of lipid is made up of individual monomers, and in this case the monomers are either referred to as being fatty acids or they're referred to as being glycerol, and we'll look at some models of those in just a second. Some extra information down here that if you eat fats that are solid at room temperature, they are called fats, as opposed to being oils, which are liquid at room temperature. Reminder also that you need to know about the functions of fat in our diet. We need fat as an energy store. It's also very, very important in terms of keeping our bodies warm. We've got a layer of fat underneath the skin called adipose tissue, which keeps us warm. And there's some extra functions there to add to the list. So lipids can be referred to as fats or oils, but all lipids, whether they're fats or oils, are made up of the ones we eat, are made up of triglycerides, and triglycerides are themselves made up of a molecule called glycerol and a molecule called fatty acid. And what we've got here is a simple lipid. You don't need to know the names of these, but you need to appreciate that these are examples of different fatty acids here, and then the glycerol is always the same structure here. And you can see the carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. The takeaways are all these things that are bolded up in blue here, here, and here. If we look at this next picture, we can see here that this is a model of a triglyceride. Okay, why is this helpful? Because it's really showing us that we've got a glycerol unit, which is shown here in red, and we've got a chemical bond. The chemical bond is referred to as being an ester bond, and that ester bond is connected to this fatty acid here. And we've got 1, 2, 3 fatty acids, and each fatty acid can be different or they can be the same. We've got a variety of different fatty acids, but what you need to appreciate, your takeaway, is that this is a model, and this model is a polymer. The polymer is made up of the individual monomer units, fatty acids, and glycerol. In your booklets, we've got a diagram which looks like this. Is exactly the same thing. Okay, so let's have a look at this together. What we've got here is a triglyceride molecule, a polymer molecule, or a lipid molecule, a fat molecule, all same thing. The blue, the green is representing the glycerol, and the red is representing the 3 fatty acids. what we've got here, and we'll come back to this idea later on, is an enzyme. So lipase is the enzyme which breaks the bond here so that we've got these individual monomers being produced over here. So lipase is the enzyme. We're going to look at enzymes in the next booklet a little bit later in term 2, maybe in term 3 now. But fat is represented here in a model, and when it's broken down, it's represented here as being individual monomers. So we've got the monomer and we've got the polymer. And the monomer and the polymer are made up of the chemical elements carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And it's a really good idea at this stage that you look at your textbook, and pages 49 and pages 50 will give you additional information which is about both carbohydrates and lipids. So check in on that information. Anything that you're not clear about, then you come and you meet me on Google Meet and you ask me that question either in the lesson today, or you can do it again next lesson. But what I'm going to next do is produce another video on proteins, and we're going to unpack the proteins in the same sort of way. But remember, these are models, and models are representations which hopefully help us to understand complicated things in a more straightforward way.